Hi, good evening. How was your day? Have you been having those nights where your mind just won't slow down? Tonight's story is about a little bunny named Milktea and a magical bubble that leads her on a gentle journey across a quiet lake. It's a soft, peaceful tale, and I hope it brings a little warmth to your heart as you drift off to sleep. If you'd like, you can lie down, let your body and mind relax, and just listen. Milktea the rabbit and the house on the lake. Milktea the little bunny loved blowing bubbles. One gentle afternoon, she was playing with her brothers and sisters, sending bubbles floating into the sky. Softly, gently, up and up they went, rising into the blue. But then, there was one bubble that just wouldn't pop. It floated around Milktea, drifting softly as if it were playing a little game. Milktea reached out and tapped it. Boop! The bubble wobbled a little, but didn't pop. Huh? Just then, the bubble passed quietly in front of her and began to float away, as if whispering, "This way." Milktea stared at the bubble, and then, without even thinking, she began to follow it. Milktea hopped along a forest path, chasing after the drifting bubble. She stepped on soft, fluffy leaves, pausing now and then to look ahead. The bubble floated gently, swaying in the air. Milktea watched it closely, her eyes following it wherever it went. Then, she pushed aside some tall grass, and all at once, the world opened wide. In front of her was a great, shining lake. The lake was perfectly still, like a mirror reflecting the sky. Right in the center was a tiny island all alone. On the island stood a small house with a pointed roof and wooden walls. Beside the house, a little pink rowboat made of wood rested quietly at the shore. "What is that little house?" Milktea whispered. She held her breath and stared at it in wonder. Just then, Milktea remembered something her mama had told her long ago. "When I was a little bunny," Mama had said, "I got lost and found myself standing at the edge of a big lake. In the middle of the lake, I saw a tiny little house. It looked so sweet, and I really wanted to go there. But I didn't know how. There was no way to get across." Mama had smiled softly when she told the story, but her smile looked just a little bit sad. Milktea looked closely. That house, there was no doubt. It was the same little house Mama had seen all those years ago. I want to go too, she whispered. But the lake stretched out, deep and wide. There was no boat anywhere in sight. How do I get there? Milktea wondered. She stood very still, gazing across the water. As Milktea stood there, wondering what to do, suddenly the bubble floated gently out over the lake and touched the water's surface with the lightest little tap. And then, pop, pop, pop. Soft, round bubbles began to rise up from the water, one after another. They floated into place as if forming a path all the way to the island. Milktea stared at the strange new path, wide-eyed and full of wonder. Milktea stepped closer to the lake and peeked down at the path of bubbles. Each one was round and wobbly, lined up gently over the water. Can I really walk on these? She felt a little scared and almost put her foot back. But then, the bubble ahead of her glowed softly and turned around as if to say, "It's okay." Milktea slowly lifted one paw and placed it on the first bubble. Boop! It didn't pop. It was soft and just a little cool, but it held her up like it was always meant to be there. Step by step, Milktea began to walk along the path of bubbles. Pop, wobble. The bubbles were soft, a little slippery, but they held her up, gently and surely. When she looked back, the shore was slowly drifting farther away. All around her, the lake was still and silent. No wind, no sound, not even a ripple. Just a bubble floating gently ahead of her, showing her the way. And little by little, the island came closer. At last, the end of the bubble path came into view. Milktea stepped carefully onto the edge of the island. She padded softly across the cool, damp grass. And then, right in front of her, stood a little house. It had a triangle roof and wooden walls slightly faded by time. Milktea slowly looked up and gazed at the house. It's just like the one Mama saw. Feeling a flutter of excitement, she gave her round little tail a happy wiggle. Milktea had made it all the way to the little house, but she couldn't quite bring herself to knock. Instead, she quietly tiptoed around the side, and there she found a round window. Step by tiny step, she climbed up with her small feet and placed her paws on the windowsill. Peeking inside, she saw a warm, glowing room. At a big wooden table, A woman was sewing a stuffed animal. All around the room, neatly arranged on shelves and chairs, were colorful, cuddly animals of every shape and size. Milktea's eyes grew wide with wonder. Just then, the woman looked up and turned toward the round window. Her eyes met Milktea's. Startled, Milktea quickly ducked out of sight. But her long round ears were still peeking out from the edge of the window. The woman gave a soft chuckle and walked slowly to the door. Then, with a gentle smile, she said, "Hello there. Welcome." Milktea stepped quietly into the cozy little house. "I'm Sarah," said the woman with a gentle smile. She led Milktea to a spot beside a soft, warm cushion. "This house is my favorite place in the world," she said. "I saw it from far away, fell in love with it, and I've lived here ever since." As she spoke in her soft, calm voice, Sarah looked down at the piece of fabric she held in her hands. "I love making stuffed animals. Even when I'm all alone, I don't feel lonely because I have them here with me. But lately, I just haven't been able to make them very well." Sarah gave a small smile and looked down just a little. Sarah stared at Milktea for a moment. Then suddenly, she gently pulled her into a hug. "So warm, so soft," she whispered. "I wish I could make a stuffed animal like this." Milktea was a little surprised, but something inside her felt happy. She gave her tail a soft, fluttery wiggle. "Would you help me?" Sarah asked in a voice as soft as a cloud. From that day on, Sarah began working on a new stuffed animal right beside Milktea. She gently stroked the soft fur, traced the smoothness of her round tummy, and now and then sketched Milktea's round eyes and fluffy little tail on paper. Milktea would sit very still, giggling just a little, as if the touch tickled. For several days after that, Milktea spent quiet, peaceful moments with Sarah by her side. When she was modeling for a sketch, Sarah tied a tiny ribbon on her head. "You look lovely," Sarah would say, and every time she did, Milktea's little tail gave a happy flutter. At night, they slept side by side on a warm, soft blanket. And high up in the corner of the ceiling, the bubble floated gently, watching over them with a quiet, gentle glow. One morning, Sarah gently placed something beside Milktea. It was a stuffed bunny, soft and fluffy, that looked just like her. The round eyes, the tiny little tail, the gentle curve of her cheeks. Everything had been sewn with such tenderness. "It's finished," Sarah said, her eyes shining softly as she looked at the blush. Thank you. Because of you, I feel like I can keep going now. Milktea felt a little shy, but very happy. She leaned in close and nuzzled her cheek against Sarah's hand. That afternoon, a bubble floated gently down right in front of Milktea. She looked at it for a while, then slowly turned to look up at Sarah. Sarah gave a gentle nod and wrapped her arms around Milktea in a soft hug. Come back anytime, and bring your family and friends too. This house will always be here. Milktea nodded slowly, then nestled close to Sarah one more time. Milktea followed the bubble, stepping gently onto the path of floating bubbles once again. Pop, bubble, just like before. The gentle trail stretched across the water. Before long, through the blades of grass, she could see the shadows of the forest she knew so well. And waiting by the lake shore were her mother and father and all of her brothers and sisters. Milktea, they called out, waving happily. As soon as Milktea reached the shore, the bubble floated upward, light as air. Then, with a faint simmer, it quietly disappeared. Milktea ran straight into her mother's arms and gave her a big warm hug. I went to that house on the lake, she whispered. Someday, let's all go together. And from the safety of her mother's embrace, Milktea's soft little voice drifted gently into the air. That's the end of tonight's story. Thank you for listening. Sweet dreams. Good night.